You've said before that fiat money isn't just failing, but that it's fundamentally unsustainable. A way that I and many others have framed this many times before is that it's not actually money, right? It's debt-based money, which is if you understand money as the final extinguisher of debt, you can pretty quickly understand that that's an oxymoron, right? It doesn't make any sense. So can we just start with like this fundamental design flaw? Why is it that debt-based money, aka fiat currency, must always expand in its supply to exist?
Yeah, well, that's the really big question, right? That's the biggest orange pill there is, because you start from kindergarten learning about money, but they don't tell you that it's currency.
Yeah.
So I always like to tell people you have to know the difference between money and currency.
Yes.
And the main difference, the number one thing is that money can be a store of value and currency cannot.
Yeah.
And that's the failure of the system right now. Everybody's trying to be responsible, work hard, and save dollars, but the purchasing power of their dollars continues to erode.
Yeah.
And then that's really made possible by the abuse of the system. So a lot of Bitcoiners, sometimes they get triggered when I tell them, look, the dollar is deflationary. It really is. It's the abuse of the dollar that makes it inflationary. So if they wanted the dollar to be deflationary, they could take up the proper steps to do that. And the thing is you can't trust it. Right? What did Satoshi say? There's a lack of trust. I love that he said that. He never said it's fundamentally flawed. The core principles are broken. No, it was the lack of trust and the continued abuse of the system that causes the problem. So we can never trust politicians. We can never trust governments. We have no precedent or reason to do that. Hence Bitcoin. We eliminate the trusts. We take that trust and we put it into core code that requires proof of work that allows and creates the savings technology. All right, that's really what makes Bitcoin. I like to call it engineered money.
Yes.
It's not just money versus currency. Gold is that natural money. Gold has that hardness. It requires proof of work to pull it out of the ground. You have the price discovery process of the cost of production and the gold miners being forced to ask for a price above that cost. And then over time, 1 ounce of gold was $20 and one really nice suit was $20. 1 ounce of gold is $3,000. One really nice suit is $3,000. How did that happen? Was that because there was an increase on the demand for gold? No. It happened because as the dollar was devalued, the costs of the producer continue to go up. And if the producer is going to remain in business, they have to ask for a price above the cost. That creates profit.
Yeah.
Profit is the invisible hand that drives the marketplace. And what's so magical about engineered money, not just natural money, because we've engineered this savings technology. We have upgraded gold, the hardness of gold that comes naturally in the cost to pull it out of the ground and the depth of and cost to find it has actually been upgraded to absolute digital scarcity. You can't find more. Like if you hear a lot these days, the gold-backed U.S. treasuries. If we just back the treasuries with gold, if we just revalue gold to $50,000 or $100,000, the problem with that is if you create artificial profit relative to cost, like if the government came out and said 1 ounce of gold is now worth $100,000, the cost to get the gold didn't change.
Right.
So what happens is Elon Musk is no longer going to be worried about Mars. He's going to be sending rockets up there to get all the golden asteroids that are out there.
Right.
Because the profit creates incentive and drives, it's the invisible hand that drives the marketplace.
Yeah.
And money keeps that true. Fiat currency completely eliminates that. There is no cost. There is no proof of work. You can just magically create dollars. But that doesn't create production. It doesn't create proof. It bypasses that step. And because of that, the costs start to go up. And when the costs go up, that's how gold preserved its purchasing power. They say you don't buy gold to get rich. You buy gold to stay rich.
Right.
What makes Bitcoin different than gold and a better form of gold, it's not just the natural, it's the engineered. You can buy Bitcoin to get rich. Not just right now because we're so early in the process that the emergence of the asset class, as demand goes against that supply, you're going to get that S-curve adoption and that's going to lead to a repricing event. That's one element. But the other element is its strategic design. The other element is the difficulty adjustment. When you take into account absolute digital scarcity, and then as the hash rate grows Every 2016 blocks, if the blocks are longer than 10 minutes, the difficulty decreases. That lowers cost of production, incentivizes the network to grow again. But vice versa, if blocks are less than 10 minutes, the difficulty increases, increasing the cost of production. That means Bitcoin miners, they have to ask for a higher price above their cost to maintain profitability. Otherwise, hash rate would shrink. So this relationship between hash rate and difficulty create this engineered element within Bitcoin that leverages the natural laws of economics and price discovery to drive value into the asset class. Because the more demand there is for it, the higher the hash rate goes. The higher the hash rate goes, the higher the difficulty, the higher difficulty, the higher the cost. So you can actually buy Bitcoin to increase your purchasing power over time because of the value proposition of the network. And I'm sure you agree, Robert, in today's world, in a world full of lies, a truth ledger is probably the most valuable proposition there is.
Dude, I think it's wonderfully said. And still, although I've been thinking about it, talking about it, studying it for 9 years now, it's still mind-boggling to hear it stated again, right? That it is... I've described it as a vortex of positive incentives that no one knows how to turn off, but it's exactly as you describe it, right? It's engineered to increase the cost of production per Bitcoin. And that is basically driving the market price higher. Now, a lot of traditional economists will say that's not possible. You can't engineer demand, right? Demand is subjective. Valuation is subjective. And there's some truth to that. But the fact that Bitcoin is engineered to have the perfect monetary properties, right? It's always, I narrow them down to 5. People do different ones, but divisibility, durability, recognizability, portability, scarcity. But it's also that has that ratcheting effect on its production cost every 4 years. That you have kind of engineered demand, right? You created the perfect money and you make its cost of production go up every 4 years, which means its market price basically follows. And that is truly mind-boggling. It's like Satoshi created an economic singularity of sorts, and every individual that is self-interested, which is every individual, so far as Darwin would tell us, will need to adopt this money in order to outcompete others, basically.
The most kickback I get on this is they say, well, if I go in my backyard and I dig a hole and it costs me $100, then the hole's not worth $100. So cost has nothing to do with price. Yeah. That's what typically the traditional
Marx's
economists
labor theory of value.
Right.
Yeah.
The difference is that hole has no value.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a base layer of demand for this line of thinking to be applied.
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, we see the base layer of demand of buyers growing faster than any asset class in the world. It's actually even growing faster than the internet.
Yes.
So we have a base layer of demand. It's going exponential. And because we know there's going to be consistent demand, we can now use cost-based analysis to understand the price discovery process. Just like you would with any other good or asset. That's the power of free markets.
Yeah.
It's the free market price signal. The reason that communism loses, the reason that socialism loses, is because eventually they fight the price signal.
Yes.
And they don't know how to allocate resources because milk should cost this much. But then if there's an increase in demand of milk and the price can't increase, the profit disappears. When the profit disappears, the producers don't produce it anymore, supply goes down. The price has to go up to create profit, or else the good or service will completely eliminate itself.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to meet in the middle there. You have to be able to say, yeah, you know what? Cost structure analysis doesn't matter if there's no demand. But when you have a strong base layer of demand, that cost structure analysis can play a really big role in understanding what's happening here. And that's what price discovery is.
Yeah.
Price discovery is, we know Bitcoin has value. We know it has immense value. We know it has a slowly growing base layer of demand. And we don't necessarily need to engineer the demand because the value proposition itself attracts the demand. But the cost, that's where the difficulty comes in. It's that one variable. If we push up costs because of the growth of the network, can we accelerate the price discovery process? Can we take that business cycle that we see the Austrians talk about, and can we leverage that to empower the holder of the asset?
Yeah.
And that, to me, I still am like baffled that was able to be figured out. And it wasn't one person, right? People will think like it just came out of nowhere. No, there's 70 plus years of computer science and history that goes into finding Bitcoin as that perfect engineered money.
Yeah, no, excellent. There's a chart, maybe we can pull it up on the screen if the editors will hear this. Bitcoin's, I think they break it into like a 40-year history of the trial and error that preceded Bitcoin, right? DigiCash and eGold and all these other things. A lot of attempts at creating digital non-state cash, basically private money online, but they all failed because they were centralized. And Bitcoin basically put the ingredients together in the right way. There's not really, what's fascinating about Bitcoin too is that it's not actually novel, right? If you break it down into its components, all the components already existed. Satoshi just mixed the ingredients in the right way to create decentralized non-state digital cash. And it is fascinating. And I guess to go back to your theory, I mean, the vignette about digging the hole and why does that not have value? Like that's the Marxist labor theory of value, right? There used to be this theory that, well, value was a reflection of how much labor was put into it. And then you could say, okay, well, if I pay a guy to dig a hole and fill it back up all day, obviously he's not creating anything of value, but there's a lot of labor going into it, so that doesn't make sense. And that was the bridge to basically valuation is subjective, right? It's a matter of customer preference. There's nothing intrinsic to it. Mises said something like value doesn't exist in things, it exists in us. It's how we respond to the conditions of our environment. So there's nothing intrinsically valuable, even something as essential as water, right? Water is not valuable to a drowning man, for instance. But the difference, I guess, between the hole in the ground and Bitcoin is that this thing, as you said, you called it like base level demand. And I would say that is base level demand that has been registered on the properties this thing exhibits as money or coalesced around the properties this thing exhibits as money, right? It is extremely portable, for instance, right? It's extremely durable because it's decentralized. So it exhibits these properties already. So it already has that. And so once there's demand and there's a price, right, which means there's more demand for the thing than there is supply of the thing, so therefore it is scarce, it's just a matter of ratcheting up that production cost.
Yeah.
Basically spirals, this is the number go up technology as Bitcoiners call it. And that, yeah, it still is stunning. It is actually truly stunning. And it's, what's the old saying that I think maybe Saylor said this, all your models are destroyed, right? All of Keynesian economics, the whole pseudo-scientific paradigm of Keynesian economics is literally rug pulled by this thing.
Yeah.
Because it says it's not possible, should not exist, can't exist. And Bitcoin's just like a big fuck you. It's like, you know what? Fuck all your models. I am the fastest growing asset in human history for 15 years running. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.